What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo with Mike Golic Jr. That is me, back from the 4th of July holiday. With me, as always, super producer Brandon Newman. And it felt right as we were coming on to the show, I angrily heard my father, Mike Golic Sr., who is back with us today, cursing the technology on his computer that he couldn't figure out yet again. Dad, good morning. How you doing?
Yeah, it was a right at the end. With 5 seconds ago, I got it done. That's all I got to say. So nobody would have known had you not told them that there was that behind the scenes, duck under the water, moving their feet really fast while it looked calm. So thank you for throwing me under the bus. I appreciate that very much. And yes, I missed a couple of shows. I know Mike mentioned it. My mother passed away last Thursday. And listen, she's 92 years old. She lived a great life. For 91 and a half of those years, she was self-sufficient, up to driving a car and working out in the backyard and the garden and such. So it is, while I'm certainly very sad I lost my mother, no doubt about that, the life she lived was fantastic. And I think we would all sign up for 91 and a half years of self-sufficiency and then, passing at 92. I know I would take that in a heartbeat. She was a great lady. My dad passed about 10 years ago. Actually, we had the funeral July 3rd for my mom, and in 2013, July 3rd, we had the funeral for my dad. So exactly 10 years apart, which is kind of wild. But like I said, very sad she is gone. But she lived a great life. So it was, in my eyes, at the funeral, kind of a celebration of life. So that's kind of the way I took it. And she got to see her 3 great grandkids, which are anywhere from a year to a few months to 9 to 10, 11 months old in the last couple of weeks again. So all good. While again, sad, all good on her life, what she had and the people she left behind. It was a very, very nice ceremony. So that is where I was. And now I am back to, why not go right into talk about eating hot dogs.
Yeah, that does seem in its own way very weirdly appropriate given the situation. So we do have plenty of hot dogs to get to. We do have that to get to. But yeah, it was definitely much more celebration of life than it was anything else. And I feel like, Dad, when it is that setup, because, for you, we're going through old things, had old pictures up of Grandma Kate from back in the day, and you get to see so many people from so many different portions of life for her that you get a lot of these great stories about this person who I'm sure for you, you know all of them, you lived all of them, you've seen them, but for a lot of us in the grandkid contingency, hearing from people along the way, her Aunt V, our Aunt V, who had been friends with her for 70 years, the concept of knowing someone and having your best friend be someone you've known for 70 years was wild to me. They had been at the wedding, at Sydney's wedding, cutting it up this last April, going out to the casino, drinking Southern Comfort. It's amazing to comprehend that. And so seeing just, the kinds of people that you've been able to keep around for so long was really, really cool.
Yeah, you don't see 70 plus year friendships an awful lot. My brother Bob's the oldest and he's 65. So she was our mother I'm 60, Greg is 62. So we're all in our 60s, but she was friends with some of these women, especially my Aunt V, who isn't really my aunt, but we all know that. We all kind of go through the people that were close to you. They become like our aunts and uncles, that they were friends for so long. And it was pretty wild as we start the process of cleaning out the house, which I'm sure many people have done who have lost their parents. You start to really reminisce about things. And for you grandkids coming in and kind of going through the house and go, wow, I didn't know this or I didn't know that. That was pretty neat to see as the house was getting cleaned out. But yeah, what a life. They had a group, they called them the Club Unique. They all grew up together. And we were friends for 50, 60, 70 years. And there's still some people left in the group. It's amazing. You don't see that anymore, but I'm sure in some places it is like that. And it's a very cool thing. But I don't know, Mike, if you'll have ever had a friend for 70 some years. The one I will is if your mother and I are married for over 70 years, that'll have been my friend for over 70 years. But It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing how close this group all was and still is. It was pretty wild.
Club Unique is my favorite thing that comes out of that. A group of people who liked hanging out so much, they just gave themselves an official nickname and used that as the basis for a friend group that was going to help raise this village of children. It's incredible. That's the one thing I need to talk with my friends about. We've got to do a better job of starting to try and come in and create things like this, because I am very worried I will not have a Club Unique to give my offspring eventually at some point. So we're going to work on that. But again, like you said, you did a great job talking to the funeral too, Dad, and kind of helping put into context that great life well lived. So sure, it was a hard day in a lot of ways like that, but definitely, like you said, more of a celebration than anything else. So thank you. There were people that, reached out and gave well wishes and sent kind regards. So we appreciate that from everyone. We do have a great show today. We promise, as always. You can, download, subscribe, rate, review, do all that fun stuff. We've got a lot of the Dame Lillard stuff. Dad, you've been off since really the end of the show last Thursday, and so we haven't gotten to get into a lot of the Dame Lillard news with you and some of the stuff that's gone on in NBA free agency, because I think there's some interesting, existential sports questions about what franchises owe star players and what's at stake right now for Portland as a franchise, as a small market team, the smallest market, I believe, in the NBA, as they step forward into this new realm. But you mentioned it before, Dad. Dogs and buns were flying yesterday. So we were off on July 4th because I had travel issues, so we didn't get to do the lead-up show into one of your and I's favorite events, the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest in Coney Island. And, Dad, were you like me terrified at the prospect that yesterday, because of weather, we actually almost had this event canceled? I don't know if you can actually have 4th of July at this point if Joey Chestnut's not out there baptizing hot dogs and buns.
Well, I mean, Joey Chestnut was out there trying to get all the eaters together saying, we're doing this. It was wild because on social media, there were reports it was canceled. But if you looked at the bottom line where it was going to be on ESPN2, they kept saying it was just a weather delay because there was lightning at Coney Island and everybody was seeking shelter. So obviously they had to delay this thing. But then there seemed to be the miscommunication, or maybe that's just Twitter. Somebody said it was canceled and everybody ran with it. Who knows? Because TV never did. ESPN2 never did. They always said weather delay. And then it was supposed to be a noon start, right? And I think it ended up being a 2:00 start. So it was like 2 hours delayed. But yeah, I mean, Twitter was going nuts. Like, you can't cancel this. Put it indoors. Put up a tent. Everybody was losing their mind over. I mean, this is about as staple as there is that we have in this country, that there's going to be fireworks on the 4th of July in the evening, and in the morning, we're going to have a hot dog eating contest, which pretty much Mickey Sudo and Joey Chestnut are going to win until otherwise noted.
Yeah, and I guess that is maybe what this helped do. Like you said, that communication ends up, I think, helping continue to build the mythology around Joey Chestnut. Because like you mentioned, so Joey Chestnut won again now for the 16th time in the last 17 hot dog contests. He had 63 hot dogs and buns this time around. Mickey Sudo won on the women's side yet again with 39 and a half hot dogs there. And the delay certainly played a factor in that, Dad, but I think the biggest thing that was produced was we've had the same champions by and large for the last number of years now. With Joey, we mentioned it's the second time he's 8-peated. It's the second time he's won 8 hot dog contests in a row. And so we're getting the UConn women's basketball problem where you've got one person winning all this, so much so that they've had to make a show of the second place finish that they tried to do yesterday. But last year you had a protester run on stage that Joey choked out in the middle of the contest en route to still winning by 20 dogs. And in this year, you've now got the built-up mythology of him going out there and rallying the troops and getting them back there to maybe mask the odor of a contest that's become so lopsided and doesn't look like it's got any shot of finding a worthy challenger in the immediate future.
Yeah, you wonder when that's going to happen. Because again, as you mentioned, he had 62. The most he's ever had is the record of 76. And then for Mickey, she had 39 and a half. Her most ever has been 48 and a half and had her 9th win, as you said. So that's what we're waiting for. So to me, it seems wild to say, because then all on Twitter is like, where is Joey Chestnut as far as the greatest athletes? Will Chamberlain won 11 titles. Well, Joey has 16. and a lot of people say, well, Kobayashi isn't in it anymore, so that's been the guy that was the challenger for him. So where do we put Joey Chestnut with the greatest run of championships? And is he going to, I think second place was 49. So that's still, even though Joey was off, that's 13 hot dogs and buns less. So you wonder, where is the competition going to come from? Dare I say, it's kind of like when Tiger Woods was dominating for a number of years, right? Did we like that, or did we want to see him challenge? It's kind of, what flavor of ice cream do you like? Do you like to see that one person, that one team dominate, or do you want to see more parity? Because right now, Joey Chestnut is what Tiger Woods was to the PGA Tour when it was him against the field. And even more, because this is the one event we're talking about where in golf you have the 4 majors every year, and nobody's close to him. Nobody is close to Joey. So it's either going to take Joey falling off, or one of these competitors, or somebody coming out of nowhere that's going to challenge Joey. Or how long's this string going to go? Could he get to 20? I wonder if he has a number in mind, that he wants to do. Because he does about 20 of these contests a year, but this is the main one, and he's on 16 right now. It's absurd.
I do wonder, and I hadn't considered that, if Joey Chestnut, like a lot of athletes, has that number in his head where he'd be satisfied, or he wants to hit, where he may actually hang up the mustard belt. So, Dad, before that we turn the page on hot dogs and buns, and again, congratulations to Joey and Mickey. I do feel like there's something comforting when it comes to dominance in one area about it being this particular sport on this particular holiday, because I think for the most part, people like the comfort of being able to turn on the TV and knowing Joey Chestnut is going to baptize some hot dogs. That's why people were so up in arms at the thought of it being canceled, because we just kind of need this as a marker of this is the time of year. This is a part of the holiday now. It's tradition, essentially. And so we get that. I got to call the Nathan's hot dog eating contest twice while I was at ESPN. It's the one thing I would say that I got to do at ESPN that you didn't get to do, that you were pretty jealous of. And so I got asked the question a lot in the lead up to that as you're getting ready and doing all the prep, which is a lot like doing the prep for a football game. For people that aren't aware, like, I was taking over for Adam Mean, so I was calling him. I was doing play-by-play. I'd never done that before. So I'm nervously asking Adam Mean questions about how to do play-by-play for a contest that he had done so successfully the night before. But one of the things you get asked in all the interviews in the lead up is, how many hot dogs and buns do you think you could take down in that 10-minute window that they're at there? So, Dad, you guys did a lot of stuff with the competitive eaters over the years on Mike and Mike. Did you ever actually line up and try and do hot dogs and buns?
Not hot dogs and buns. We brought a few of the eaters in during Mike and Mike after I had lost a bet, so I had to go against them, and it was wings, but it was boneless wings that we ate. And obviously we shortened the time, it was more made for TV. But I never did the hot dog, so I always wondered, how many I could get. I do think I could get to double digits. I mean, I do, get the hot dog down first, and then the gross part is you'd have to wet the bun, right, to make it go down easier. They stick the bun in water, and it's something obviously we're not used to doing. So that would take a little bit of grossness to get used to, so it would just kind of disintegrate in your mouth so you could get more. But I got to believe double digits somewhere, right? I mean, we would have, we're an eating family. We would have to be able to now, and I wouldn't be racing unbelievably fast because I know I would wear down. So I would just try and get kind of a steady pace going. But I do wonder I'm afraid to do it because of how it would make me feel. I do think, could we hit 20?
Oh, no, absolutely. No.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I think 10 is the number where I'd be comfortable saying on the best day, if I get the prime weather conditions, the dogs are running fast that day, I think between 8 and 10 is where I'd feel comfortable. Yeah. 20, you're probably going to have to get the paddles out and revive me. If I manage to get 20 dogs in my person, because I'll never forget, Dad, you mentioned seeing those guys up close and personal. I did an eating exhibition with Joey Chestnut once before the national championship down in New Orleans when Clemson and LSU were playing, and it was beignets. So we went and did and they were the full size of your fist beignets. on a boat. It was me, him, and then one of the local guys there that was a competitive eater from the area. And we had 4 minutes to do this on Facebook Live. I was very proud of myself. I ate 14 beignets in 4 minutes at that exhibition. Okay. Felt pretty good about that. Like you said, I went and roamed it. I had the water right there. I was dunking them a little bit to try and wet them to go down, because the one bit of advice I got was these are powdered beignets, so if you breathe in, you're going to have a really bad time. So I thought I'd wet down that. I kid you not, I'm not making this number up. In 4 minutes, Joey Chestnut, who was right next to me, ate 72 of them.
It's stunning. I mean, it's just stunning.
It was one of the scariest things I've ever seen in person. I equated it to being like having to pull your car over on the side of the highway during like really, really fast traffic going past you. I had to stop myself from gawking at him during it because it was just so impressive. I thought he was going to reach over and start eating off my plate. So these guys are just built at a different speed, because then he went and drank beers in the parking lot after. It was a slow Tuesday for him.
That is the amazing thing of the aftermath. Obviously, my fear too would be what they call reversal of fortune. If you throw up, you're disqualified. And plus, it'd be really embarrassing to regurgitate. And then at the end, chipmunking. You know, do you chipmunk at the end of that thing and put all in your mouth that you can, because it then would count? I think a lot of people believe they could eat more than they really could. I don't think it's a fact of getting it down, but then how full do you feel when you're just not used to it? You just arbitrarily jump into some contest, you start stuffing food in your pie hole, and you're not used to it, and how quickly you would fill up and start to be sick, and you keep trying to pile stuff on top of it. So I'm glad you got that experience of it. That's always good when you're going to call an event, but you have experience in the event to kind of know at least a tiny bit of what they're going through. And yes, that's one of the things I'm definitely jealous of you, that you got to cover that and I never did in my 20 some years at ESPN. That is a definite regret, because it seems like it'd be such a ball, because you know what? They're good people. They're fun people too. They're very nice people.
Well, and like a lot of them now, like this is serious training for them. They want to be taken seriously as athletes because they're putting in that kind of work. And so it was cool to be able to kind of experience it in that way, get to know a couple of them throughout the process. You know, Mickey and her husband, Nick, who I believe finished 4th in the contest this year, friends of the show.
He did.
Had been out a couple of weeks ago for National Donut Day.
So I did see, because again, it is July, and this is what we do in podcasts and radio and everything, is you do Mount Rushmores. And of course, you saw up there, does Joey Chestnut belong on the all-time sports Mount Rushmore? And the other names thrown out were Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps, Joey Chestnut, and I forgot who some of the other ones were. But that is classic July sports talk, is the Mount Rushmore. But I thought, I'm sure we have done that in the past, but again, Joey Chestnut, would he belong on that? Because some people are grossed out by this event, and some people are mad because to say it's a waste of food. Understand, Nathan's donates hundreds of thousands of hot dogs to people who are food insecure, so they donate a ton of food. So, I mean, I hope everybody could understand that and not, but they get grossed out again by the eating, but I think it's so cool. And you wonder, does Joey Chestnut belong on the Mount Rushmore of all-time athletes?
Without question. What this man has done to Glizzy's is worth our all-time thanks and praise there. And for the people that are grossed out by it, I assure you, you are never going to be as grossed out by it as the eaters themselves were when, during the pandemic, we had to do this contest inside without fan noise. They were actually begging the people inside to crank up the ambient music so they couldn't hear the sounds of each other chewing and guzzling hot dogs indoors on a hot day. All right, guys, summer's in full swing, and you need a go-to pair of great sunglasses that you don't got to baby or worry about the entire time. Knockaround is the go-to for quality polarized sunglasses that aren't going to break the bank, aren't going to lighten your wallet this summer, and going to leave you looking and feeling phenomenal. Plus, right now, too, just in time for All-Star Weekend, they have released the first 9 teams of their MLB collection. You've got the Red Sox and the Yankees in there, obviously. Maybe you want to support the hometown team All-Star Weekend, throw on a little Marlins action here, look good, feel good. Maybe you're really hyped for the Women's World Cup and you want to support the women's soccer team here. Go to a little USA action. We're coming off the 4th of July. You can add a little something to that game day outfit to look and feel phenomenal. So don't be the person squinting at the sun, worried about getting sand in their overpriced shades. Check out knockaround.com for great looking polarized sunglasses at just $28. So, Dad, over the weekend, when you were away from the show with us, a lot of the Damian Lillard news has taken center stage in the NBA right now after he requested a trade, wants to finally move off of Portland after over a decade out there trying to make it happen, trying to be the guy who stayed, trying to be the guy who didn't, in his own words, describing Paul George, run from the grind. Now we've got this in the crosshairs here. Dad, first off, any of this really surprising to you with Damian Lillard that we finally got to this breaking point with him?
No, not surprising at all. Listen, we've talked about Dame for years about getting out there if he wanted to win a championship. I know they've gotten somewhat close years ago, but, not making the playoffs last year. And then Dame saying, he was basically hoping they would trade that pick for a ready-made player to make a run, and they didn't. They went with Scoot Henderson with that third pick. So now there's going to be that discussion, and I know we're going to have, and I've seen it on other sports shows, is Dame going to start to get some criticism, for doing this? And I heard you talked about before, what's the loyalty owed back and forth? My thought has always been, now I came at it from an average player who had really no interaction with management at all. It was, meritocracy. I had to play well enough for them to want to keep me on the team, and nowadays you have to do that with the cap involved and all that as well. And I had always said, man, they owe you nothing. You owe them nothing. Okay. They sign you to a deal. They pay you to go play, and that's what you go do. So don't get emotionally attached. Don't make it personal. Understand it's a business. Now, what differs today, I think, Mike, is the fact that if you are talking to or involved with management about the direction of the team, then it makes it a little more dicey. That's what I don't know. How much was Damian Lillard talking to management about this? Did he just let his feelings be known in social media? Was his agent telling management there? What was that relationship? Because we see it in football, especially with the quarterbacks. I'd like to be involved in who we're picking in the draft. And in all honesty, management can say, hit the bricks on that one. That's our job. You go on the field and play, and we'll pick the players for you to play. But you're talking about massaging relationships. So do you make people feel like they're a little more involved, I should say, in the equation? And that's what I don't know. How much was he involved, if at all, in any equation? If he was involved and there was a back and forth, then you would have hoped there would have been a concrete understanding of, hey, you take a player with that third pick, a youngster, I think I'm probably going to want out of here. But I don't know if that was just kind of floating in the ether or was said. So that's what I would need to know. Because for the most part, I stand by what I said. It's a business. You owe them nothing. They owe you nothing. It's contract. You get paid incredibly well, and you go play ball.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing because I've seen the criticism from some people of what you pointed out, the organization, Dame saying his preference is to play for the Miami Heat, which is what I believe the report was from Ramona Shelburne and Woj at ESPN. And people pointing out they don't owe him that on the back half of this for services rendered. You've got GM and Joe Cronin, who's here, who I don't believe has been here for the entire tenure with Dame.
Right.
You've got ownership that's different now. Paul Allen, who had been the owner there until 2018, who unfortunately passed away from cancer. His sister Jody's in charge of the estate. And there's some thoughts. I heard Amin El Hassan on the Dan Le Batard show in the local hour talking about there is also the background noise of this might be a team that's going to be sold at some point in the near future and how that factors into all this. But people making the bottom line point that they don't owe Dame some thanks for your service. We'll take less in return package on the way out of here. Nope. In the same breath, though, I would say, Dad, that, yeah, Damian Lillard, it sounds like, made it clear through the reports that we heard coming out through one thing or the other. Hey, I don't want to be a part of a rebuild. That seemed to have been on wax for a while. him saying he didn't want to be part of a youth movement. And so I have to imagine from ownership side and from Joe Cronin's side, there was some understanding the minute you took Scoot Henderson with that third pick and didn't move that for another star player that was going to help Dame win now, as Dame is around my age, is like 33, 32 years old, getting ready for the twilight of his career, that was going to be the breaking away point for everyone now. And so Damian Lillard has the same leverage, Dad, that I feel like every star player in the NBA has, which is the ability to make things difficult for a team based on his outsized importance there, right? Because we can talk about his influence in trying to get people over there. His influence on the court, he has been the Trailblazers for a decade plus now. And so on the back half of that with his number, it is, one, not something that I'm sure you want to deal with that discomfort closer and closer to the season, even though other teams know this guy wants out, and so it affects you leverage-wise. But, Dad, if you're Portland, you've got to set yourself up for your basketball future, and this is going to be the best asset that you have to do that, probably for another 10 years, unless you really nail the Scoot Henderson pick.
Yeah, listen, they didn't like the package right now from Miami because that's the team it looks like Dame wants to go to. Looks like there's going to have to be a third team involved in that. But, you know, I saw somewhere where it said the only critique you could make of Lillard is he could have communicated his request before the Blazers reportedly agreed to that extension for Jeremy Grant, a 5-year $160. I disagree with that as well. I mean, if the team was wondering, when you're talking about that kind of money, I don't understand why there's not more. Maybe there was communication. If you're just hoping, let's sign Jeremy Grant to this extension and it'll show Dame that we're ready to go. If you truly are wondering that, ask him. Say, hey, Dame, you know what's going on out there, right? We know he had said if you draft a guy with 3, don't want to be part of youth movement. How about saying, hey, Dame, we're going to extend this guy. What can we do? If you truly want him back and want to work something out, there would be communication. If there's not, then I don't want to hear any criticism for Dame to say, oh, we should have let him know. They should have let him know that before the extension. And also on Portland's side, their job now is to get the most assets they can, not to make Dame happy. Listen, I know it was a great relationship and you'd love it to end in an amicable, great way. But the job of Portland is to put the best team on the court for the Portland Trailblazers. That means, and you're right, they're not going to have an asset like this for a long time that they can trade. They need to maximize this deal if they're going to trade him and get all they can in return. I mean, I'll continue to say it. It is a business, and that's the way you have to treat it. And if y'all didn't communicate enough, then that's on y'all, not any individual person.
I like the idea of the Jeremy Grant contract as the marital version of having a kid to try and save the relationship. Instead of like going to therapy and talking to this out, we'll just have a baby and that'll solve all the problems here. A 5-year, however many $160 million baby with Jeremy Grant, who has to be sitting over there going, I don't care who we're playing next to here. I'm rich now. So y'all can go and figure out your little business over here. I'll be figuring out what businesses I want to invest in over on this side. Dad, ultimately with where it is now, because it is a difficult spot where anytime you've got a player in their camp publicly saying, this is where I want to go, it really sort of kneecaps you in negotiations. We heard that a couple other teams interested in this include the Philadelphia 76ers, who, that one's fascinating to me, Dad, what you prioritize if you are Portland in trying to get back in return. Because we've heard Tyler Hero might be kind of a sticking point in the conversation with Miami. Right. But if you're Portland, Dad, do you prioritize long-term? Do you want to try and acquire more draft capital, acquire more things that you can take shots at getting players through that system? Because Portland, you're never really going to be a free agent destination. Or do you look at a team like the 76ers and say, well, James Harden wants out of there. We've got Dame Lillard who wants out of there. I know the Sixers are acting like Tyrese Maxey's the second coming of Christ and aren't going to move him at all. But if there's another player you can come up off like that, do you try and go and keep a name involved, sort of the way Sam Presti in Oklahoma City did for a long time, just so that you have something to put asses in seats at this point? Because that's the other fear, right? If you're a small market team, not having a draw currently if you don't have a star player the way you've been accustomed to for a decade.
Well, you got to build, in my opinion anyway, you have to build for a championship. So what's the way? Jeremy Grant, again, who they signed with the extension, is 29, right? So Scooter Henderson's going to get all the love and right now and the press as the young guy coming in to help Portland, right? Dame is out, Scooter is in, he's the guy. So how then do you build? That's a great question. It seems to me like they're not going to be able to build right now for a championship. So I think the pieces you need to bring in from a player aspect, forgetting the draft, because you know you're getting young players there if you get picks, but from a player aspect is don't get a player that's too old. You know, but I do get it because you are the balancing act of we need to put a viable product out there because we didn't make the playoffs last year to keep putting people in the seats. So is there that name guy, which would be great as long as that name guy is going to be there for a little while and you can build around him and through the growth of a Scooter Henderson over the next couple of years and then to acquire more assets like draft picks to go ahead and build that team. But I don't think this is a team right now through the trade where you're going to build and say, we are going to be competitive and pushing for the title right now. I think it's a building, it's a couple year stepping stones for Portland.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right way to go about it. Like, you know, even jokes about the Portland strip club seeing a sign. I don't think James Harden, even at that, would be the kind of player that would probably motivation-wise be at his best out in Portland or just situationally for you. You'd be caught between worlds if you're that team. So building towards the future is probably going to be your best route, and then hoping you manage to just draft really well, which is kind of what you have to do, which is what the track record of the organization's been so far. But for Joe Cronin now, you've got to kind of show, all right, I can leverage this situation. I'm not going to go and get embarrassed on the big stage right now by these players, because, Dan, I'm sure that's the fear if you're Joe Cronin and you see this, especially positioned against Miami, who is this hyper-competent organization, who does have Pat Riley and Spo and all of these people that are looked at as the best at what they do in basketball. Because at the end of the day, I ultimately think star players in this league get what they want. And usually that ends up being the case. So I'd imagine, to me, the simplest solution is they find a third team that's able to grease the wheels enough to get Damian Lillard to the Miami Heat. And then we get to kind of see how high the fire rises. Like that, to me, seeing Damian Lillard be in discussions with a team that's an actual contender is going to be a joy. And now for Miami, who, like, Dad, I've been fascinated. So when we have that conversation about what the potential for this actually is here, I feel like Dame is in the perfect sweet spot to where I don't know how we hold this against him. I understand Paul George went on his podcast and brought up comments Damian Lillard made about him back in the day when Paul George was sticking with teams, talking about running from the grind, talking about being afraid to work there with a team. But I feel like after as long as Dame has been in Portland, that argument kind of goes by the wayside, and he's allowed to go and explore this while he's still got some of his best basketball years left. And this would be still something we look and say, oh yeah, huge resume boosting win for Dame Lillard, and not an indictment the way that people treated it like with Kevin Durant.
Yeah, listen, we know how this works. All your past comments come back to haunt you, right? I'm staying here, I want to build here, and now I'm leaving. So it could be 20 years and people be like, oh, you hypocrite, you didn't mean what you said. I mean, you almost can't win, but you're not thinking about it when you're in your fourth or fifth year. When people are saying maybe you need to get out of there and he's like, no, I don't want to leave. I want to stay here. All that stuff can come back to haunt you, and he can't worry about that. You're never going to please everybody. I think he's got you want to say a lot of respect, different than this is the era though where players bop around. So it doesn't affect me one bit. You know, I know when Stugotz has his fun and saying Kevin Durant really has no championships because I don't buy into that. I don't have a problem with guys moving. I know it didn't happen when I played back in the day. They didn't do that. There wasn't the freedom and the player power like there is now. Because look at now, a player in the NBA says, I want to trade a star player. They're going to get traded. A star player in the NFL says that they're going to get like, yeah, oh yeah, right. Okay, whatever. That's not happening. You can stay with the team or not get paid. You know, it just doesn't work like that in the NFL. But the NBA, it does. So there is the part of there's a lot of balls to juggle if you're Portland. Do you trade him if he wants out? Do you trade him where he wants to go? You got to get the best deal you want, but you want to make it look like you're working with the player. For the next star player that you hope to have on your team, they see that you treated the outgoing player pretty well, so you have that good relationship. It's just a lot, because the one thing I had said and again, I come at it from a different view. But I took some things personal with the Eagles when I left in free agency for Miami. And it was dumb on me. So I have just been touting to when I talk with athletes about free agency and stuff, that I've said this for decades now. Don't take it personal. And it's hard. It's hard, especially when you've been with a team for a while. You've been the face of that team. You think there should be some personal connection. And then at the end, you find out, man, this really is just a business. And yet you want it to be more. You so want it to be more, but 99.9% of the time, it's not. And the player needs to do what's right for the player, and the team needs to do what's right for the team. And whoever has the most leverage a lot of times wins in those situations.
Yeah, I think that's always the most disconcerting part for a player above a certain level, because when you're a star, right, like you mentioned, most players don't have a relationship with the front office. You don't see those people, but when they either back in the day used to actually physically sign your checks, or when the direct deposit hits that you think about them. But for everyone else, like for some of the star level guys, when you are the face of the franchise, there's a little bit more of a feeling that you're them. And when you realize you're with the rest of us, that's kind of a cold splash of water for a lot of these guys. But, Dad, you mentioned it, how players will look at this, because it seemed pretty obvious. There was kind of a leak from Dame's camp, I think, about people saying other star players are watching how Portland's going to do that. In general, I agree with that notion that word of mouth is still one of the strongest sales pitches you have.
Yeah.
That's college or pro, right? When it comes to recruiting in college, when it comes to free agency and professional sports, money's always going to win, but if it's comparable and the situations are close, people talk about, hey, this is kind of how they treat you around here. These are the amenities. We saw that in the NFL, when the NFLPA put out that report card of all the different parts of the organization ranked by the players in that blind survey about how they get down in each of these areas. I saw Ryan Russillo and some guys push back for Portland, specifically on this notion that it would be all that important for them, just because, Dad, they're never going to be able to play in the free agent party like everyone else. And I think that's worth noting, right? This is like what we saw in Jacksonville when they had to overpay the Jags to get Christian Kirk to come there as a wide receiver. Right. Because if the money's comparable, yeah, you've got a quarterback to sell on, which is a little different in the NFL when you've got dependent positions. But in the NBA, if you're Portland, you're going to have to Jeremy Grant this thing. You're going to have to throw money at people to try and ease that problem, because being on a level field and then having people know you treat your stars the right way probably won't net you the same return there. And I do think Ryan is right about that.
Hey, winning begets winning, right? I mean, why do we think, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, when they're doing their winning, why they're getting a lot of the top recruits? Because they're winning. Not only are they winning, but their players are going on to the NFL. So it's exactly what the 5 stars want to see. So that's what happens. So you get the organizations out there that are winning. You're a star player. You can go there and you're going to get paid with these max extensions or extensions that you can sign. So basketball players are in a great position right now, a position of power, more than any other sport out there, I think, where they can control their movement. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier. What's the relationship? Because you said, did Dame's camp leak something out? Do players, if they want to be involved, do they go to management and say, hey, I'd like to be involved in what's going on? Or do they feel they're too big and management should come to them and say, hey, Mr. Superstar of our team, we want you involved in this? I just think at the end of it, and this is in a lot of places, and I've talked about this as well, there's just a lack of communication on what we want to do to go forward. What's the plan going forward? You have exit meetings all the time with players, right? What a great opportunity to sit down with Dame and say, Dame, what's going to make you stay here? And then Portland decides, do you want to do that to have him stay there? Or what's the conversation? Man, at least when you talk to somebody face to face, everybody understands the situation. Everybody understands, now it's right there. Well, this is what they said. Now, if they don't do it, and lie to you, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But to have that conversation with the star player to at least know what the footing is within that organization.
I don't doubt that they knew what the stakes were going into it, but I think now on the back end, it's a lot of people in an obvious situation trying to publicly in different ways jockey for leverage in this situation to get what they want done. And for Dame, he wants to go and play in Miami. And for Portland, they want to show the rest of their league that they can do business in this way and not get taken advantage of as their star player exits the franchise. All right, let's get ready to finish this thing off with this, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to finish off your day, send you on out to your merry way. As always, you can download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating. For people today that were wondering where Charlotte Wilder was for a Wilder Wednesday, we're back to keeping you on your toes. It sounds like because of holiday travel, we'll be in the market for maybe a Wilder Friday, so keep your eyes up and your ears peeled for that. Charlotte will be back in those ears pretty soon here, but Dad, why don't we get to a few stories to finish this off and start with some good news out of the NFL. We know we're kind of in the doldrums right now, getting ready for training camps, post-mini camps, all those things going on, but got some really good news for one player. Foster Moreau, tight end for the New Orleans Saints, got some great news that his cancer is now in full remission. He made the announcement some 3 months after he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma after a physical with the Saints. And Dad, we've seen this a lot in sports where the physicals and the testing that we do normally, just run-of-the-mill stuff, can end up helping some of these guys save their lives. And so great news here. Obviously, his football career is so secondary once you hear that word, but really happy for him. And hopefully he can now get back to doing the thing he loves to do.
And listen, cancer has touched everybody's lives, whether personally or family member or extended family member. We've all gone through it. But I mean, just imagine that, being in a position where you're looking to go to another team. Yeah, I got to take a physical. You think nothing of it, right? You're just going to go take a physical and then you're going to do your deal and something pops up. As you've mentioned, this has happened before. That is without question saved lives. So as you mentioned, football aside, and we hope the football career goes on and is fantastic. But what a way to find out. And then for it to be in remission right now, you just keep hoping that it stays that way. But that is an incredibly great story. Horrible about the cancer, but great the way it was found out, detected, and now in remission.
Yeah, he did treatment for 6 to 8 hours a day for a couple of months, and his treatment actually ended the day he signed his contract with the Saints, a 3-year, $12 million contract with the Saints in May. He was able to participate fully in their voluntary offseason program, and now we'll get to march forward with this good news into training camp and into the rest of the year. So everyone very excited. Congratulations to Foster Moreau and his family on what I have to imagine is the best news, even with all that in mind, that he will get in quite some time. Dad, let's get to that. Sticking on the football front here. I said this yesterday, and I feel like I actually might kind of mean it. We're getting to the point where The Last Dance may have done more harm than good. The documentary on the 98 Bulls, the 10-part series that was a huge gift for all of us, especially in the content industry during the pandemic when we didn't have actual live sports, now has everybody thinking that their lives are worthy of a 10-part documentary. We've seen the Patriots documentaries. We've seen Derek Jeter documentaries put out. And now apparently Netflix is getting set to be the platform that will deliver a 10-part documentary on Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, worth some $50-odd million. Now, it doesn't sound like the deal is fully executed yet. And Dad, apparently we're going to get never-before-seen sit-down interview footage with the guys that were actual players on those 90s Cowboys teams that really everyone's interested, right? With Aikman and Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith. But where are you at on the notion of a 10-part docuseries centered around Jerry Jones and not specifically the Cowboys?
Well, Jerry Jones is the Cowboys, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, so for this one, it's a little more personal to me because that era, I mean, I was in Philly and we were playing Dallas twice a year. That was, Bountygate. That was, the hate between Jimmy Johnson and Buddy Ryan, going on then. That was during the time they were winning their Super Bowls and built that team. So for me, I hope they show the bad and the good, because in 89, I think it was 89, when we played them early in the season, we had 11 or 12 sacks and I had 2.5. So I hope they show that. I hope they show some of my sacks and show some of the bad side of Dallas getting beat up. Because then I hope on the other side, when they're showing the good stuff, that I'm not in those highlights, getting blocked or getting knocked down or something as Emmitt Smith is running by me. So I have a bit of a personal touch in this one as how I will be, how I may see some of the highlights. But also, anybody who knows about that era, you can sit there and have your interviews with Troy and Irvin and Emmett and talk about what went on the field, but everybody's going to want to know about the White House. For those Cowboys.
Give us the cocaine.
Did they have that house? They did. And what went on there? Will they talk about that? Will that be part of it? Because that's what you want. If you're going to give me a docuseries, you got to give me everything. You can't come in and just tell me the good. There's got to be the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's how it's got to work. So so I've lived the football stuff. I was on the field for a lot of that. So that part I don't care so much about seeing because I was there for it. But man, oh man, if they start bringing that stuff up, who is willing to talk about that, and what are they going to be able to uncover about that information? I bet you're going to get a whole lot of anonymous people giving some info about that.
I was going to say, well, I could damn sure it's going to end up being like Beyond Scared Straight in those shows where it's just the silhouette and the thrown voice. Because I can't imagine anybody that was actually hanging out at the White House is going to put their name on that and ruin their lives with any more of that, even though it would be the content that we all want. Like, that is what everyone was waiting around for. You're absolutely right. Save the America's team stuff. Save the actual championship stuff. We want to know what was going on in that damn White House. You also have the same approach I do to this, Dad, in most things, which is the caliber of player that I was and where you were in the NFL. I just don't want to end up on somebody else's highlight reel. I said that was my only goal. I played against Aaron Donald, I think his junior year of college. And my only goal when he was getting drafted was to make sure I didn't end up on the draft day highlight reel. I somehow managed to pull that off. And to this day, it's probably my greatest career accomplishment. So I can totally understand that's just not the place that you want to wind up, because I've seen how that can go for guys, and it is not cute. Dad, let's get to the third. I actually want your expertise on this area because for anyone that doesn't know, my father, one of his first jobs, I believe his first job in life, was a lifeguard at the pool in the summer back in Willowick, Ohio. And we had a little bit of incident at the pool the other day. So Rick Ross, famous rapper, the biggest boss you've seen thus far, had a viral moment at a public pool. Now, I don't know why there were all these people around. I'd imagine that's just life when you're Rick Ross. But he had pubbed apparently in a lead up to this appearance at a pool that he was going to pull off some elaborate dive. He gave it some made-up name that he admitted after was completely made up and nonsensical. And a viral video went out of Rick Ross trying to double jump on a diving board. And Dad, there's no other way to put it, had a blowout. Flat tire, knee just buckled on him before he fell into the pool in front of a crowd of onlookers, all with their phones straight out. And I give him credit. He went to the internet after, Dad, and said, people have been reaching out, asking if I'm all right. He said, of course I'm not all right. I blew out my tire in front of all those people and embarrassed myself. So, Dad, you've seen this video now. Is this the most embarrassing thing you've seen happen at a pool? I know you've spent a lot of time around them in life. Well,
it's a tough call because there's so many people there watching him. And just if you're not used to doing it, get the timing down of a regular one bounce springboard dive can be hard enough. But he tried a double. And basically, if you don't time that right, the board's coming back up when your feet are coming down, and it makes you kind of buckle, which is exactly what happened to him. For me, it was actually before lifeguarding. I was on the swim team there as well. That's the first competitive sport me and my brothers did. So I was probably 10 years old. And 10 years old, obviously you're there with other kids that are 8 to 10 to 15 years old. It was right before swim practice. And I remember you come to practice and you usually wear your bathing suit under your shorts and you just get undressed and you go to the pool. Right behind the blocks you do it and leave your clothes there. Well, I guess I forgot to put my suit on at home. I took my shorts off, thought it was my suit, took my shirt off, my shorts off, and I walked and I was standing getting ready to jump in the pool in my underwear. And all of a sudden, everybody on the team was there and I'm looking around going, they're like, Mike. And I looked down and I freaked out. And in reality, why freak out? Your underwear is the same size as a bathing suit, but who cares? But when you're 10 years old, man, it mattered.
I was really just glad that didn't end with 10-year-old nudity. And this podcast won't either. We'll see you tomorrow. Boom. Money in the bank.